Hello everyone. Welcome to the event this evening on understanding and engaging with politics and democracy. So this event today was organised by Our Bright Future and I'm Ashley, the Our Bright Future apprentice. Our Bright Future is a programme of 31 projects led by the Wildlife Trust and funded by the National Lottery Community Fund, which brings together the youth and environmental sector. This event today is all about influencing policy and democracy and links with the Our Bright Future Ask Number 3, which calls upon policymakers to create space for young people to be heard and play an active role in society. So looking at an overview of the session, there will be Gary Hart, Senior Educator and Engagement Officer at UK Parliament, focusing on the importance of voting, how to vote and different types of voting systems. Then we will hear from Dan Townsend, the Youth Work Manager at Youth Cymru, who will give us some information about the devolved elections in Scotland and Wales. We will then have a Q&A session followed by a short break. Then in the second part of the session, in the event, we will hear from the Our Bright Future team, Isla and Roberta, of ways of engaging with politics. Then we will hear from Dawn from Ulster Wildlife Trust, around using social media to create change. Then Emily at YouthLink Scotland on organising hustings, and then followed by a Q&A session. So without any further ado, I will hand over to Gary.
Thanks, Ashley. I'm just going to share my screen, so if you give me a few moments. Hope you can see it okay when we start. Okay, are we in? Can we see the screen okay?
Yeah, we can see it.
Representation and voting. Okay, fantastic. Okay, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, my name's Gary Hart. I'm from the UK Parliament, and I'm joined this evening by my colleague Malcolm. Our role, we are education and engagement officers. So our role is to try to explain how UK Parliament works and to encourage people to get more involved and to think about issues which are important to you. So we're going to talk about representation and voting this evening. So without any further ado, let's start voting. Let's see how easy it is to start voting. All right, so in the chat, if you can all see the chat, cast your vote, please. What do you prefer, cats or dogs? Malcolm will tally up the results and see if we are cat lovers or dog lovers here this evening.
Lots and lots of cat fans, Gary. Surprising.
Wow, okay,
yeah.
Surprising.
So
yep.
Only 2 people for dogs, everyone else for cats.
Wow, that is very surprising. That's that could be the biggest election shock for many a year.
We have had a couple more in late ones and a couple more for dogs. Somebody saying both, a couple of people saying both, but definitely cats tonight.
Okay, so this evening we have cast our votes and we are cat lovers. Okay, interesting stuff. All right, what about our next vote? So this is a bit more complex, a bit more complicated. This is probably the most difficult decision you'll have made all day. What's your favourite biscuit? You have 12 choices. Take your time, have a look, and then cast your vote accordingly, please.
Getting me hungry now, Gary.
Yeah, just before tea time. I apologise. Yeah.
So we've had a few people in for number 7, fig rolls, which makes a change.
Oh, fantastic! I love fig rolls. And no one ever votes for fig rolls, so thank you so much for voting for those.
So we've got Roberta, who's obviously very couth. She's going for number 8, so she's obviously got very posh tastes. We've got chocolate.
That's the Italian in Roberta coming out. I think Italian quality of taste.
Mamma mia. We've got chocolate digestive. Oh, good. A couple of people into party rings. We've got a real mixture, custard cream. Oh, somebody's going for a Garibaldi.
Okay.
Number 3, Hobnob. So I reckon it's a real mixture tonight, Gary, for that one.
All right. Okay. Fantastic. So look, 2 quick examples there of how easy it is to formulate an opinion and cast a vote. We decide which is best for us, and then we vote accordingly. Simple and easy to do so, and that's what happens when we talk about elections. We form our opinion. We decide what's the best candidate, the best party, the best policies for us, and then we vote whichever way we think is best for us. Okay, so Malcolm and I are from the UK Parliament. Just to quickly run through the UK Parliament, what it is: 2 chambers, House of Commons, chamber with the green benches. That's where the members of Parliament, the MPs, go along. Second chamber is the House of Lords. Now, the big difference between the two chambers is the members in the House of Lords are not elected. They are not voted for. We only vote for members in the House of Commons. MPs in the House of Commons will take part in debates and raise issues on our behalf and speak up on our behalf. And remember, no matter where you are in the UK, there is a member of Parliament who represents you and is your spokesperson at Parliament. Okay, quick question. How many MPs do you think we have at the UK House of Commons? Give us your answer in the chat, please. Let us know what you think.
Got a couple of C's, lots of B's.
Okay.
The presentation's gone a little bit skew if Gary. I don't know if you need to restart it.
Is it back on now? Can you see it now?
You need to start it again, like play it.
Okay, my apologies. 1 second.
So we've got, I'd say, a mixture between B's and C's. So people seem to think it's between those two. Okay.
Can you all see the screen okay now with the answer? Answer C, 650. Can we see it okay?
No, we've got like your, we can see like the desktop, Gary.
Oh my goodness. Okay, that's not good, is it? All right, I apologize. 1 second. Let me come out of this a sec.
So it's the answer C, isn't it? 650.
Answer C, yes.
Half of us got it right. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, 1 second. Apologies. Technical problems. It's always the way, isn't it? I think maybe it's too hot today. The laptop can't keep up. Okay, can you see the screen now? Okay.
Yeah, we're there. Perfect.
Okay, apologies. All right, so yeah, well done those who went for option C, 650. There are 650 democratically elected MPs at the UK Parliament, and that'll teach me to press buttons on my laptop, and I'm not too sure what I'm doing. We shall go further. Okay, so this is a map of the UK. You can see on this map that it is divided up into 650 different shapes. Each shape represents a constituency. Now, think back to December 2019, we had a UK-wide general election. These were the votes cast for all the different parties. What do you think the colours represent? What do those different colours represent on the map? What do you think? Give us a quick answer or come on the microphone and shout out. What do you think those colours represent?
So we've got Megan saying parties.
Excellent, well done, Megan. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, they are the different political parties. So you can see different colours in those particular shapes represent a different colour party. Across England and Wales, it's mainly red and blue. Red is for the Labour Party, blue is for the Conservative Party. In Northern Ireland, we have different parties who normally stand in Northern Ireland. And of course, the SNP has the most seats in Scotland. You can see from this, the figures on the left-hand side of your screen now, the Conservative Party had the most votes, had the most MPs elected, 365 MPs. So all those areas which are blue, those areas elected a Conservative Party MP. So therefore, the Conservative Party won the election in December 2019. And the leader of the Conservative Party, Boris Johnson, he continued as Prime Minister. Now, when it comes to a UK-wide general election, those 650 MPs are entitled to go along to the House of Commons. Some of them refuse to, of course. Some of them don't bother coming along to the House of Commons. But those that do come along to the House of Commons here, as you can see, this is a scene from before the coronavirus pandemic, which seems an awful long time ago now. MPs will usually all squeeze in to take part in debates, ask questions to the government, raise issues on our behalf. And these are the members who've been democratically elected from all over the UK. Remember, no matter where you are in the UK, there is an MP who represents you. In the Commons, this is where the government sit. The government sit on the front bench here. So these are the people who run the various government departments, who run such departments like transport and education and the environment. They sit on the front bench here. MPs from different parties will then ask questions to the government. The second chamber we mentioned was the House of Lords. So remember, we don't vote for these people. Approximately 800 members in the House of Lords. They have a similar role to MPs in the Commons. They take part in debates, they ask questions, they raise issues, they spend lots of time looking at legislation. So when we have a new law in the UK, it spends most of its time before it becomes an Act of Parliament in the House of Lords. Okay, so going back to the election in December 2019, we have in the UK a first past the post electoral system. So whenever we have a general election and elections for local councils across the UK, which are happening next month, of course, we have first past the post. Whichever candidate gets the most votes wins the election. So before we had our cats and dogs election, cats won the election because more people voted for cats than voted for dogs. It doesn't matter about the numbers, it's just whoever gets the most votes. To give you a quick example, here we have 4 different parties, A, B, C and D. It's pretty obvious Party D has won the election here because Party D has the most votes. So a candidate from Party D is elected. Sometimes it can be really, really tight. So in this example here, again, this is first past the post system. But in this example, parties A, B and C have more votes put together than Party D. So in this particular area, more people have not voted for Party D. That doesn't matter. Party D has the most votes, therefore wins the election. And that's the way it works when we have a first past the post system. Whoever gets the most votes, they then win the election. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple. Now, of course, we do have different electoral systems depending what election and where we are in the UK. They tend to go from a majoritarian, so whichever party gets the majority, to a proportional system. We've looked at first past the post, which happens for elections to the UK Parliament and also for local council elections, which are happening next month. Scottish Parliament and Welsh Parliament, you're going to hear more about those in the next presentation, of course, but they have different types of voting system. The additional member system is used in Scotland and Wales. This is where voters are given 2 separate votes on different ballot papers, and 1 vote is for the constituency member, 1 vote is for the party list. So you'll hear more about that in a few moments. Different type of system. And over in Northern Ireland, for the Northern Ireland Assembly, again, a different system again, which is the single transferable vote, where voters rank candidates in order of preference, 1, 2, 3, and so on. And depending on quotas and so on, we then work out which candidate wins the election. So different types of voting system across the UK when it comes to general elections, Scottish, Welsh Parliament elections, Northern Ireland Assembly elections, local council elections, when it comes to elections for police, crime and commissioners, to different elections. So it can be quite complex and quite confusing when it comes to voting. And depending on where you are, obviously it's prevalent that you know which type of election is taking place. Well, another question for you. In order to register to vote in the UK general election, how old do you think you need to be? Is it A, 18 or over and live at an address? Is it B, 18 or over and have an address? Or is it C, 16 or over and have an address? Remember, this is for UK-wide general elections. Cast your vote in the chat box, please.
Bit of a tricky one.
So just have a look at the wording for this one.
So we've had about 4 A's. Sorry, I'm not being very accurate. Lots of B's.
Okay.
So yeah, B's winning in that one.
Okay, interesting. Well, in order to register to vote for a UK general election, you can be 16. So remember, this is to register to vote, not to actually vote. When it comes to voting in a UK general election, you have to be 18, but you can register to vote at 16. Okay, so if you haven't already done so, it's important that you do so. It's very straightforward and simple to do so. Now, because of different acts of parliament which have come in, and then further acts which have been brought into fruition in Scotland and Wales, there are different voting ages across the UK. So as we know, you can register to vote at 16 when it comes to UK elections. It's the same in Northern Ireland, but in Scotland and Wales, you can register to vote when you are 14. Now, if you haven't already done so before the forthcoming local and parliamentary and assembly elections, the deadline in order to vote for these elections is Monday the 19th of April, so it's only 3 weeks away. So if you haven't registered to vote already, please do so. It's very, very quick and simple to do so. There is a link on the screen. Malcolm will post a link in the chat box too. If you've got a mobile phone handy, you can scan the QR code as well. It takes you to a government website. You can then put in your details. It just takes a few moments, no more than 5 minutes. Once you've registered once, you're done for life unless circumstances change and you change address. But you're on the electoral roll, and it's handy for future things like bank loans and properties and buying and getting a mortgage and so on. And of course, it entitles you to then vote in a general election, along with parliamentary elections in Scotland and Wales and the Assembly elections in Northern Ireland. So very important you do so. Okay, so when it comes to elections, it's essential you know whom you're voting for. So when you cast your votes before on your favourite biscuits, think about some of the criteria you chose to make your selection. You probably thought about taste, about how good it is with a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, whether your biscuit passes the dunking in a cup of tea test, all these things which are crucial. Similarly, when it comes to a local election or a general election, it's important you know who and what you're voting for. So do take time to have a look at different policies. All political parties publish their manifestos with lots of promises they say they will make if they are successful in elections. So it's important you have a look at those particular policies. Okay, I'm going to hand it over to you again now. Just imagine you are writing your own party manifesto. What policies would you include and why? So we'd like you to spend just a couple of minutes. We haven't got much time in this presentation, so a couple of minutes. Type in maybe 1 or 2 policies you'd like to see if you were writing your own party manifesto. Okay, go.
So there's a few messages in the chat box. There's one from Ellie who says equality for all and to help nature. One from Isla.
Brilliant, Ellie, fantastic.
One from Isla, stronger environmental protections. Then one from Dawn, support for biodiversity. Megan, enough social housing and a strategy to combat climate change. From Dan, free health, free education, free transport, support young people accessing entry-level jobs. And then Emily, abolish the patriarchy, free education, lower voting age.
Okay, so lots and lots of issues coming through in that short space of time. All right, keep those issues coming forward. You've got 20 seconds counting down now. Any more things you'd like to include in your own political party manifesto? Now is the time to share your policy.
Yeah, we got a few more. There's one from Aaliyah, legalise electrical scooters.
Okay, interesting.
And then one from Yazin, better management and more attention to healthcare, social care.
Okay, so lots and lots of issues. So when it comes to voting in the forthcoming elections, just have a look if any political parties have similar ideas to yourselves. When the candidates come round to knock on your front door or in your street or wherever you live, speak to the candidates, contact the political parties with your issues, let them know these are the issues which are important to you. Then when we have the election, whichever political party is elected by where you live, in local elections and in national elections too, let your representatives know about these issues which are important to you. Remember, you are represented by a number of people, an MP at the UK Parliament, MSPs, MLAs and members of the the Senate, no matter where you live in the UK. There's lots of representation. Let these elected people know about these issues. It's important that you speak up. And I'll tell you a secret, elected people want to hear from young people all the time. They want to hear young people's points of view, things which are important to you. So do question these political candidates and their political ideas whenever you get the opportunity. Okay, brilliant. Almost time for me to finish off, but just going back to the UK general election. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
We are running out of.
Okay, it's fine. No problem. No problem. Thanks, Roberta. That's fine. I know it's great to want to start talking about politics. I can't stop.
No problem at all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
It was a great speech. Great interaction as well. Lots of responses to like with ideas for the political parties' manifestos.
Thank you, everybody, for getting involved. Some great policy ideas there. Thank you so much.
It's back to you, Ashley.
Perfect. So that was really great to listen to. Thank you, Gary. So now we will hand over to Dan.
So if you can pop up my presentation, be amazing. Thank you very much. So I'm going to be discussing the devolved elections. Thank you, Gary and Malcolm. Very interested in supporting and understand the political landscape across the UK. So who am I? I'm Dan Townsend. I'm the youth work manager or project and youth engagement officer, depending on my time of day. I support youth organisations from across Wales, potentially 300 per year, and reach young people, 230,000 young people potentially each year. My role is to support a number of projects within Youth Cymru. Through 2020, my role has been focusing on supporting a group of young people known as Llais Ifanc. This means Youth Voice, and a youth group that was brought together from across Wales. Across Wales. With Our Bright Futures, we supported Llais Ifanc to develop a manifesto. We felt it was important for young people to contribute to the understanding of and the process of what politics would look like in Wales and UK-wide. So they created a manifesto, met a number of politicians, which resulted in a hustings event back in February, and asked questions that mattered to them, which was based off their manifesto, which was a really interesting experience. But today we're going to be focusing on the devolved elections and the understanding. So next slide, thank you very much. Devolved in the UK, devolution in the UK has created a national parliament in Scotland, a Welsh parliament, or the Senedd, and a National Assembly in Northern Ireland. This process transfer varies in levels of power from the UK Parliament to UK nationals, but has kept authority over the devolved institutions in the UK Parliament itself. Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland all had successful referendums on devolution in the late 1990s, and I'll give the dates for them. This led to the establishment of the separate parliaments or assemblies and the democratic election of officials. Next slide, please. So in Wales, we have a National Assembly that's known as the Senedd, based in Cardiff Bay. Wales first took responsibility for the devolved powers on the 1st of July 1999. Next slide, please. The elections are normally held every 4 years on the first Thursday of May. Like Gary said, the Wales elections registration is at 14 this year. This is new to Wales and very exciting. There's been a lot of discussion over the last couple of years within Wales around the voting age and the ability to vote as a 16-year-old. So now there's an opportunity for 16 and 17-year-olds and a number of young people across Wales who may have not been able to vote before, including foreign nationals in Wales from the first time to vote this year. You'll need to register to vote before the 19th of April 2021. Gary's already provided you with a link, and you can register through UK government. Next slide, please. So your vote decides who will speak on your behalf in Parliament and make decisions affecting all aspects of your life. Your vote also decides which party forms the next Welsh Government. Everyone in Wales gets 2 votes in the Senedd elections. One's the constituency vote and one's a regional vote, which we'll have a look at next. So the constituency vote, what is it? Well, the first vote is the person you want to represent you and your local area, known as your constituency. So this will support any local issues that you may experience. So when you're trying to support education in Wales, which is done on a constituency or a region base, a local area basis, you would first look towards your constituency politicians to have that discussion. Each so there's 40 constituencies in Wales, each sending one person to the Senedd. We used first past the post, which is an elective system where the person with the highest number of votes wins. You can use your postcode to search on the Senedd website to find out where your constituency is. So you can do that search and find out directly where your constituency is and who you can vote for. The regional vote is your second vote in Wales. This is to support people who want to represent your region, and each region will send 4 people to the Senedd. So the region areas, there are 5 region areas in Wales. So we can start from the top: North Wales, Mid and West Wales, South Wales and South Wales Central, South Wales East and South Wales West. There is an additional member system where a proportional representation when voters select from a list of candidates from each party in the 5 regions, return a further 20 members. Parties use the closed list system as a form of insurance policy to ensure that key candidates have a better chance. Here's how the regional system works. So in each party or group has a list of people ready to represent each region in Wales. You vote for the party you want to represent your region. Each party total is divided by 1 plus the number of members of the Senedd it already has in the region who has won the constituency seat. The party with the highest total after the calculation gets the next seat and the person on the top of the list that is elected. This is repeated until all 4 regional seats have been decided. Next slide, please. So within Wales, the Queen, normally accompanied by the Prince of Wales, officially opens the Senedd. So the First Minister outlines the Assembly business programme in a speech. And then a presiding officer is selected by the AMs or MS as the first members of an election. So over to Scotland. So Scottish Parliament first took responsibility for the devolved powers on the 2nd of December 1999, located in Holyrood, Edinburgh. Next slide, please. Registering to vote in Scotland. Registration to vote is at 14, with the opportunity for young people and to vote from 16 to 17. By the 6th of April 2021 is when you're able to vote, and to register to vote is by the 19th of April 2021. Next slide, please. Usually there would be a dissolution instead of the usually there would be a dissolution. Instead, on the 25th of March 2021, Parliament went into recess. This was due to COVID. The election campaign starts on the 25th of March 2021. Parliament will officially be dissolved by May the 5th. Parliament elections will be held on the 6th of May, which means any bills for this year will be carried forward, unlike in previous years. So Scotland uses, again, the additional system, member system. The system allocates seats by taking the number of regional votes a party gets and divide it into the number of MSPs the party wins within the region plus 1. Voters are given a ballot paper, which they're asked to record 2 votes. The first vote, much similar to Wales, is a constituency vote. The first vote is for an area or a constituency MSP. In the constituent vote, the person with the most votes wins. There are 73 constituency MSPs in Scotland. The second vote...
Sorry,
yeah.
You've got about 1 minute and a bit to go.
Right, okay, power through. Okay, second vote, region or list of 4 additional MSPs are allocated to each of the 8 Scottish parliamentary regions. Each party stands in the region will have a list of candidates. There are 56 additional regional MSPs, 7 per region. And I apologise, I didn't see the chat. It just flashed up there. on to Northern Ireland, so I've got a little bit of time. Northern Ireland Assembly first took responsibility of devolved powers December 1998. First election was in June 1998. Northern Ireland's next election is in 2022. Next elections will be held on the first Thursday in May on the 5th calendar year. Following that, which its predecessor was elected, which will be on the 5th of May 2022. The Northern Ireland Assembly has 90 members, elected 18, 5 members from constituencies by single transfer vote or STV method. Currently in Northern Ireland, the voting age is still 18.
Perfect. Thank you, Dan. That was really interesting. So now we'll move on to a quick Q&A. So we've had a few questions. One for Gary from Megan. What's the point in being able to vote at 16? Registering to vote at 16, but not being able to actually vote?
Again, do you mean from the age of 16 to the age of 18, you're not able to vote? That 2-year gap, is that what you mean?
Yeah, I think that's...
Yeah, it's just, there's been a big movement over recent elections just to try and encourage and motivate people to get on the electoral roll as soon as possible, really. I mean, you don't have to register when you're 16, but it is available for you to do so from 16 onwards. Many people choose not to until it comes to the time of an election, really. But it's just to encourage people to get on the electoral roll as soon as they can, basically.
Perfect, thank you. And then another question as well for you, Gary.
Okay.
Does the number of MPs and Lords change? And there are so many members of House of Lords. Are they all active in taking part in debates?
Well, brilliant questions. Okay, so the number of MPs doesn't change. That's 650. Now, if that was to change, they would need a new law to change the numbers of MPs. So that will stay at 650. The number of peers in the House of Lords, that does change. The numbers there are not set in stone. At the moment, it's just over 800. It tends to fluctuate through the year. So if an elderly member passes away, he or she is not replaced. 800 is a bit of an average figure we have at the moment. And what was the last part of the question again? Sorry, Ashley.
There are so many members of the House of Lords.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, got it now. Yeah. Well, the average daily attendance before coronavirus was probably about 440 members. So just over half tend to regularly attend. The House of Lords is done on a voluntary basis. They're not compelled to attend at any time unless they're part of a committee. But that's the average sort of daily figure, about 440 members. That was before coronavirus, of course.
Perfect, thank you. And then a question for Dan now. About what powers the devolved Parliament in Wales have, and what do they cover that isn't covered at Westminster?
So within Wales, we're very lucky that we have powers over education. We also have powers over our transport. Education has been a significant change for us because this year we were able to actually decide on how our education looks like. So there's a renewal of our education system within Wales, which is really exciting. And I think, in terms of the ability for Wales to move on and make changes to the way in which we operate, the ability for young people to be inputted into that and the education system to completely change and be a new landscape is where we're at the moment, and that will be changed by the time my children turn 16, which is in the next 5 years. So it's very exciting, and this is the year where young people in Wales make the decision on what their education will look like in Wales, which is really exciting.
Perfect, thank you. And then just adding to that as well, does it differ to what powers the parliaments in Scotland and Northern Ireland have?
Oh, I'm probably not the best person to answer this particular question, I must admit.
Maybe this is more for Gary, I think, that he has got an overview of the devolved nations.
It does, yeah, it does. It does. To be honest, yeah, the devolved powers do differ between the different nations. I mean, Scotland has probably more devolved powers than Wales and Northern Ireland because of the history of the two countries and the Act of Union and so on, and there's been lots of campaigns for Scottish independence. Whereas Northern Ireland doesn't have that many devolved powers at the moment compared to Scotland and Wales. So it does vary between the three nations. The best thing, if you want more information on those, is to go on to the Scottish Parliament website or the Welsh Parliament website or the Northern Ireland Assembly website, and you'll see then the list of all the devolved and accepted powers available.
Perfect, thank you. So are there any more questions from anybody? You can say them out loud or type them in the chat box. Yeah.
Just one more question. And just to what I would like to add while we are waiting, if there is an additional question, is that we have to just finalize 4 guides, and one of these is about voting, understanding democracy and politics, and will contain information on the devolved powers as well, on what each devolved nations is covering. So you could check on that in that guide as well. Okay, another question from Megan, Ashley, and then.
Yeah. So how are constituencies decided and what are their boundaries?
Okay, so some brilliant questions tonight. Yeah, another brilliant question. Thanks, Megan. We have an independent organisation called the Boundary Commission who decides upon constituencies, and they try to make them average as regards the number of people who live in each constituency. So at the moment we have 650 constituencies. That was decided a few years ago. There's going to be a bit of a rejig soon, so constituencies are going to change. We're going to keep the same number. Because populations are shifting and people are moving around the country, they're going to rejig the constituencies. So there's going to be some it'll be in the news over the next few years before the next UK general election. But they try to decide upon constituencies based on the average number of people living in each constituency. Hope that helps.
Perfect, thank you. Thanks very much. So now we will go on to a 5-minute break. Perfect. So welcome back, everybody. Now for the second part of the event, we will be focusing on engaging with politics. So I will hand over to the Our Bright Future team, Isla and Roberta.
Thank you, Ashley. This part is about engaging with politics. The first one was understanding politics, understanding democracy, and we touch on the voting. There are several ways of engaging with politics, and if you can go to the next slide, Isla. And we believe that all young people have a right to have their voices heard. So we cover on the importance of voting in the previous session. If you can go to the next slide. Because it's important to get your voice heard in times of a general election through the vote. So please register to vote if you've got the age, and vote if you've got the age to do so. But there are also other ways that you can get your voices heard, and this is one of the 3 asks that the young people in Our Bright Future developed. So having their voices heard by decision makers is really important to them, for around the matters that are important to them and for the environment. One other way that is that you can get your voice heard is by contacting your local representatives. And all of them have got email addresses. They've got, most of them are on social media, and they do a face-to-face meetings through what it's called surgeries. So you could arrange a meeting with them that it's face-to-face. And if you don't know like who your local MP is, there is a website called theyworkforyou.com in which you can find out who is like your local MP is and how they voted in the previous kind of on different issues, on the ones that matter to them, and how you can contact them. We have run another webinar some time ago on how to engage with the local MPs. And you can access this on our YouTube channel. We will share it like after this event. But something to keep in mind is that when you prepare for a meeting, it's having in your mind like a quick some quick steps to go through. So an introduction of yourself, an introduction about what you want to cover, and also like a solution that you want to bring to the issues that you are presenting to the MPs, and thinking about they are normal people. They are busy though, so if you go with a clear ask, that's the key point as well. So asking something, and you can ask for to raise your issues with the minister in charge, or you can ask to visit your local project, you can ask to cover your issue through social media. But having that in mind is important. Then there is the other point is like a respond to consultation. So often the governments run consultations on issues that affect all of us, and you can respond to those that interest and concern you. So for example, we recently responded to one about the impact of COVID on young people's employability. Usually it's a written response that they are after, but sometimes you can also respond by submitting a video response. And you don't have to respond to all the questions, and you don't need to have all the answers to their questions, but let them know what you care about, let them know why you care about. And there are some organizations, sometimes organizations cover particular issues. We'll create a template to respond to consultation so that it's even easier for you to respond to consultation. So the suggestion is like, if you care about environmental issues, visit regularly the website of environmental organizations, because they will have some, they will cover some of these consultations on their website. Then there is the other point is about sign a petition. So you can sign a petition or even start your own petition. All like the national parliaments have got their own petition function, except from the from the Northern Ireland Assembly, where you can start and sign a petition. If a petition gets over a certain number of signatures, then this will be discussed and the parliaments need to take action. So, for example, they will hold a debate. An example is like for Wales, is like with 50 signatures. That issue is then discussed, and that's how like the levy to on single-use plastic bags was introduced in Wales. So if you similarly to the consultations, like if you care about environmental issues, like and there are like usually environmental organizations like the Wildlife Trust that cover these petitions on their website. So keep an eye on their website. And if you don't find that your issue is covered by any organizations, you can still organize your own petition. And there are websites like change.org that can allow you to do so. Now I will hand over to Ayla, who will add some suggestions, and just remember like that we've got our social media, and like you can keep an eye on them, but also the newsletter and our website for more information with on these guides, like covering all these points of how to engage influence in politics. Thank you.
Thanks, Roberta. Yeah, so I'll just run through a couple other methods of making your voice heard. So joining a campaigning organisation is an option. Obviously, there are lots of different organisations and charities, various bodies around the UK that are, in all likelihood, probably already working and campaigning on the issues that you care about. Some of those will be membership-based organisations, so you can join them as a member. Or you could perhaps help out as a volunteer, potentially even getting involved in the decision making as a youth trustee or another youth governance role. So that could be something like a youth council or a youth advisory board. We've also put protest on the slide there. Now, obviously, recently, what you might usually think of when you think about protest, like mass demonstration, hasn't really been possible or perhaps advisable lately. But if you think of something like the school strikes for climate, a really great example of how powerful collective action can be when various individuals take a stand. And a lot of those young activists you might have seen involved in the school strikes have adapted through lockdown, sort of keeping up their presence online as well. There are some more sort of formal roles that you could consider getting involved with. So, for example, youth parliaments. There are now youth parliaments or assemblies in every nation of the UK. So getting involved in your youth parliament will give you an opportunity to sort of directly represent young people and help their issues be heard. So usually a young MP will work alongside the member of parliament and kind of feed in concerns to them. And you could join a political party. I'm not going to endorse any in particular, but if there is a party that reflects your views, becoming a member can enable you to play a role in deciding that party's priorities. And you can also have a say on who local candidates are potentially that are chosen to stand for election. And speaking of standing for election, if you are over 18, you can run for a political position. So this slide here just shows the ages of the youngest members of parliament across the UK at the time of their election. And as you can see, there are some fairly young elected representatives there. Our Bright Future did recently deliver another webinar on local council elections, and that covered what's involved in being a councillor and the opportunities available to young people to run for election. And we've released a related guide on that, as Roberta mentioned, the toolkit. So do check out the Our Bright Future YouTube channel for the recording of that event, and have a look at our website for the guides, especially if you're thinking you might be up for running for something like a parish council election. There are plenty of other resources on our website. That includes a short document on the 12 ways young people can get involved in politics. And there are various other event recordings on our YouTube that might also be of interest. So would absolutely recommend taking a look at those. And we will, as Roberta mentioned, be including links in the follow-up email that we send out so that you'll have access to all of that. I'm conscious of time, so I think I'll wrap us up for our section there. I think I'm going to hand over to Dawn. Ashley, I don't know if you want to do a quick introduction for us.
Yeah, so now I'll hand over to Dawn, who's covering a little bit about social media and how to use that to make change.
Hello, thank you. Do you want to put the first slide up there? Okay, so my name's Dawn. I work for Ulster Wildlife, mostly work on the Grassroots Challenge project, and also I have a group of young advocates who are working on the Our Bright Future 3 Asks. I have been involved in social media for about 10 years now, at least, doing lots and lots and lots of little grassroots campaigns for different things over the years. And so I've learned a lot along the way, sometimes the hard way. So this is just some of the advice that I would have. We've done 2 real campaigns this year. One was called Outdoor Classroom Day and the other one was called Learn More Outdoors. So you'll see some of the slides from these as we kind of go along. So if you go to the next slide, please. Okay, so we'll sort of start with our top tips. We've only got 5 minutes, so this will be a real whistle stop thing. So basically the first thing is plan a very simple, clear campaign. When you're planning a social media campaign, remember when you tend to look at social media, people tend to scroll while they're waiting on a bus, or they're waiting on a train, or if they're having a coffee break from work or something like that. They don't go for in-depth reading. So if you want people to really read in depth, put a link to what you are wanting them to read in depth. Don't put it all on the social media post. Make your campaign really, really clear and simple, and give it an aim. You see an awful lot of social media posts where people just throw everything in because they kind of really want to give people loads of information. That just gets scrolled past as soon as, you know, too much, so it gets scrolled past. Okay, so post nice and regularly. Brainstorm and seek unbiased feedback. It's really, really good to go to the people that really don't agree with what you're saying, people who are the polar opposites of you, and get their input. No point asking everybody else who agrees with you if they think that's a good social media post, because of course they're going to say yes. The best person to ask is the person who thinks that your campaign is awful. That's the person to ask. You will get honest feedback then. Really good to get honest feedback. Keep your posts simple. Try to create posts people want to share. One of the things that I do a lot is get lots and lots of people in the posts. This is Ellie, beautiful photograph of Ellie. Of course, her mum shared it, her auntie shared it, her friends share it, and her school shared it. So my campaign gets shared. If I had put a generic person on there, it wouldn't maybe get shared by any of those people, because those people aren't really that interested in my campaign. They're interested in Ellie. That's a really, really good way to get lots of shares. So try the next post, the next slide, please. Thanks. So I need to go to the time as well. Tag people that you particularly want to see the post, or else they might miss it. Remember, thousands and thousands of social media posts go on every day, and it's really hard to get yours noticed in among others. A final sort of little bit is don't be afraid to block people. Sometimes you get people and their only thing they're trying to do is pull you down. Social media is really, really good for getting information out. It's really, really good for telling people your story. It's not a really good place to have debates, because you can't really listen to people in social media. It takes a long time, and having debates is something that is a face-to-face thing. And a lot of people waste a huge amount of time and energy online getting drawn into these debates, and very rarely do people change their minds in those debates. So don't be afraid if someone keeps coming in on your social media and, you know, with these negative comments, just block them. They're not people you want in your campaign anyway. So tell a story, say thank you to people. A lot of times people will help you. People really love thank you. So we can have the next slide, please. So the next thing is really keep it positive. That if you want to take one thing home today with you from this talk, keep it positive. The climate and biodiversity crisis is really, really depressing. We have a huge amount of work to do, and the facts and figures are overwhelming. There are plenty of other people putting all that doom and gloom out there on social media, and there's a lot of people really struggling when they're reading through it. You don't really need to add to that. You can still campaign in a really, really effective way without adding to that burden. So do be mindful whenever you're creating a post, you know, if somebody's going to be reading that, how that post will impact them. And keeping things positive is really, really worthwhile. So next slide, please. So this is just an example of a nice positive post that people liked, but we'll skip on to the next slide because we're really short of time. Okay, so videos are really, really useful. We worked with a PR company to make this series of videos. And one of the things that really shocked me was they really wanted them to be between 30 seconds and a minute. And they said to us, honestly, that's long enough. And we're thinking, but we have so much to say. And they're going, no, really short. And they just edited and edited and edited until it was shorter and shorter. And that was a really good learning curve. I mean, I've watched plenty of videos where it takes the person like 2 minutes to introduce themselves and why they made the video. Well, remember that scrolling person at the bus stop? They've scrolled past and you never actually got the message. So you have to always be very mindful of that. Most people will click on that video, and if they're not engaged in the first 10 seconds, they just scroll past. And I'm sure you've done it yourself, so you have to be mindful of that. But videos are brilliant and really well worth making. So next slide, please. So the only other thing I wanted to say about this was it's really worth the time and effort to make your social media post right for the format. So if you're doing a Twitter one, that might look different. If you give me the next slide, please. The Twitter one might look different to a Facebook or an Instagram one, and it's really worth making that effort. A lot of people just link the same social media post to different formats, but then it appears slightly different, and things are competitive now, so you have to be really careful with that. So this, one of the things you might have noticed is I've got lots of people on these. So the strategy in both of these campaigns was the same. In the first one, which was the Outdoor Classroom Day, we asked lots of teachers, we asked lots and lots of local politicians for a quote. Now, teachers then shared the teachers' ones. The local politicians then, they all of course shared theirs. And so it meant that we were able to get the campaign out nice and wide. And it's really important to kind of be very, very non-partisan. It's very easy to get a certain type of politician, especially with environmental quotes. What you really want to do is try and get them right across the board. And they will, if you ask the right question, if you think really carefully. If you say to them, do you support our climate change policy? They're not going to say yes. But if you ask them a simple question, maybe like, you know, do you think children should be outside more? They might say yes. So you'll get politicians from right across the political spectrum, maybe, and then they're supporting an environmental thing that, you know, that they feel comfortable supporting.
Dawn,
yes,
just to say 1 minute.
I need to stop. Yeah, I need to stop. So give me the last slide. Sorry. So basically, that's kind of our social media. We had a good story this week for social media, and so far, yeah, it's been well received. So thank you. That's me.
Perfect. Thank you, Dawn. And then we will hand over to Emily.
Hi, everyone. My name's Emily. I work at YouthLink Scotland, and I'm going to be talking to you all about hustings. I've been supporting a group of young people to organise a national hustings event, which I'm going to tell you a bit more about at the end. But first of all, what on earth is a hustings? So either if you can, thank you. It's really, you've probably seen them on TV, or you may have been in one in person, or maybe even online during lockdown. But they're really just a way for members of the public to ask questions of people who are running for elections in the run-up to an election, whether that's national or local. Sometimes it's the local candidates, and sometimes it's the party leaders, so the people who lead the parties and you know, are really key decision makers. It really gives you a good chance to see the difference when all the party representatives are there beside each other. You can really see which parties stand for what, and you can make then a really informed choice about who you're going to vote for. And it also gives you the opportunity to ask questions about issues that you care about that might not be so much covered by debates on the TV or by the press and media. So yeah, you can get all your kind of niche questions out there, all of those policy bits that we were telling Gary that we would put in our manifestos. That's the time that you could ask those specific questions about those issues. Next slide, please, Lara. So it might seem like, oh, is this possible for a young person to organise? Yes, absolutely. Anybody can organise a hustings. I think Gary had said that earlier as well. Politicians want to hear from young people, and it's a really great way for young people to hear from politicians as well. And like I said, asking the issues that they care about. So let's think about a little bit about the steps that are involved. So organising a hustings, even if it's a small one, is quite a bit of work. So I'd suggest getting a team together. It doesn't have to be a huge team, only needs to be a handful of you. Think about what kind of skills you have and what skills maybe your friends have or others have that you'd need in your team. Maybe you want someone who's a social media whiz like Dawn. Maybe you want someone who's super organized and is really great at admin and sending emails. Maybe you want someone who's good at publicity. Just have a think about those different skills and who would work well in your team. You obviously need to decide how your event's going to work. So thinking about that at the very start will help you later on. So thinking, are you going to have questions submitted in advance? Are you just going to take questions from the audience on the time of the event? For example, who's going to host it? How's that all going to work? So think through the event and how it would work, and that will help you later on. And obviously you need to think about when it's going to take place and where. In some respects, lockdown makes that easier because you don't have a huge amount of choice. It's probably going to be online. But again, working out which platform is the best to do that. Maybe it's Zoom, maybe it's another way. But yeah, working out all of those things. And then you need to decide who you're going to invite to speak at the hustings, which candidates. So again, if you are, maybe you care about issues in your local area that are really important for you locally. So you'd probably want to focus on your local candidates, maybe in your constituency. Or if, for example, you're holding your hustings in advance of a mayoral election, think about where the candidates are then. National candidates are obviously a little bit harder to pin down. So if you're looking at national party leaders, particularly if you're in England, I'd say that's pretty tough. And you'd probably need to have a pretty convincing argument of why they should be there, and probably a big audience, or the promise of a big audience for them. But not impossible, certainly not impossible. Next slide, please. You want someone to moderate and host your event. So someone to ask the questions, someone that might give like a bit of pushback on the politicians if they're kind of waffling on and people don't think they're giving a right answer, someone who's going to kind of give some kickback there. But obviously that person needs a bit of help and training to do that. It doesn't need to be anything formal, but maybe they just want to practice with someone for a little bit and see how that feels to kind of interrupt someone, because sometimes that can feel a bit awkward, can't it? And make sure that they're really confident asking the questions and they understand the issues, and also that they know who the candidates are and that they're able to introduce them. That's really important too. I'm not going to go into promote your event because Dawn had all the top tips there, so I'd keep with all of the things that she was saying. Make sure you get the word out. Another thing to think about was if it's a very local event, maybe you want to do posters or something that people will see around your local area, for example. Or if it's for a local cause, maybe it's for a youth work organization that you're holding this, maybe you'd want some posters up in your youth club. And then of course it's time for the event. So you've put in all that hard work, it should be running smoothly, but of course you might have a few hours on the day where you have some preparation time, making sure that you meet the candidates when they arrive, whether that's on a Zoom room or an in-person place, making sure that everything's set up at your venue, again, whether that's online or not. And then of course, running through all the questions and hopefully getting lots of good quality answers from your local candidates. Next slide, please. And you might think that your work is done after the hustings, but pause, wait. You want to keep up that good momentum and effort that you've already put in. So making sure that, for example, maybe you want to share what the candidates have been saying with other young people. So like I said at the start, it's a good way to compare what different parties are, what their positions are. So maybe you want to kind of pull those together and say, for example, this was the opinion of all these different candidates on banning plastic bags in my area, for example. And then it gives other people a really clear idea of what the parties stand for, and then helping other people to make their informed vote as well. Obviously, you want to be able to see, want to say thank you for taking part. That's really important. Even if you didn't like what they were saying on the night, they still showed up and shared their opinions, and keeping those positive relationships, even if you're not going to vote for them, still quite important. You might also want to invite those that you've elected to visit your organization or a project that you have running, your school, your college, to learn a bit more about what you're doing once they're elected, because again, they'll know a bit more about you from the questions that you've asked, and you can teach them a little bit more about what you've been up to as well. And again, hopefully that will help you to get more decisions going your way, whether that's in your local area or nationally. Last slide, please. Yeah, so I just wanted to give everybody some information about the climate Hot Seat event, which is the hustings event that I've been talking about. So if you're based in Scotland, we're having a national hustings on Friday the 9th of April in the evening. And that's taking place with the leaders of the 5 main Scottish political parties. And it has been organised by young people from 7 different environmental youth organisations across Scotland. So it's going to be really great. There's some really tough questions for party leaders. It will also be recorded and shared on social media. So if you can't make it on the night, or if you're just a bit interested, but maybe not from Scotland, definitely look out for that. Thanks, everybody.
Perfect. Thank you, Emily. Okay, so now we will move on to the Q&A part of the session. So please feel free to speak out and ask any questions you may have, or you can type them in the chat box as well, and we will answer those.
Yeah, and the questions are like from the second session, so about engaging with politics with like focus on Dawn presentation, on social media, our presentation, Isla myself, on consultations or petitions, and then the hustings that Emily covered.
I think everybody's just now busy putting their plans in place. Everybody's signing up to organizations, organizing protests and hustings. They're ready to go, I think.
That's what we really like to see. Yeah.
So for a question for Emily, what was your biggest challenge in organising the hustings?
Tough one. Probably getting the party leaders in place. So like I said, it's a national husting, so we weren't just asking local candidates, we're asking busy party leaders to commit. And one of those party leaders also happens to be the First Minister during a global pandemic and other such local crises. So I think getting all of them confirmed was quite a challenge, but also there's other things that take a lot of time, but maybe aren't particularly difficult, but making sure that the group that I was working with, that we were all feeding in, that everybody had a say in how the event was going to run. That was something that took quite a lot of time. We've been organising this husting since the autumn. So it's really taken us all this time, and next Friday is obviously the big night. So yeah, it's a lot of work, but it'll definitely be worth it.
Great, thank you, Emily. And then there's another question. Where would you get the training to manage an event like that?
So that's a good question, Megan. You could, like I said, practice just with each other. That would help you feel more comfortable. You could also talk to kind of comms experts, people who do communications as part of their job, journalists, for example. If you don't know anybody like that, kind of automatically, you could reach out to somebody even on social media and ask if they'd be willing to help support you. But I think anybody, just practicing with even one other person would help you to get better at that skill. So even if you're in school or college, asking any of your teachers, lecturers, if they would mind helping out, I'm sure that would give you some really great practice and would definitely help you feel more confident.
Perfect, thank you. So are there any more questions for our speakers? A question for Dawn. What was your coolest win on the Learn More Outdoors campaign?
Oh, well, actually, we wrote to the Minister for Education to ask for a meeting, and this is the bit I was going to tell you, and then I got cut off in my time. So we wrote to the Minister for Education to ask if he would meet with the young advocates from Ulster Wildlife. And we didn't expect a reply very quickly, but one of his advisors saw the social media and then said, oh, you should check out these young people. He then contacted Ulster Wildlife and said he was very interested. And we said, but we wrote to you. And they went, oh, and then they went, oh, so you did. And which then was really nice, because as you know, someone who would be like an education minister would have just their inbox is just crammed. So it didn't mean he was ignoring us. He just hadn't kind of got to it yet. So we jumped the queue and we had our meeting with him yesterday. And the young people were brilliant, and it went well. We'll see what comes from it. So that was good.
Thank you, Dawn. And any more questions?
There is a comment from Nicole saying that there was some brilliant advice, and she's looking up all the links posted, and so lots of like links today, lots of resources. And I said that we will follow up with more resources and more links that we mentioned today after the event. Perfect. Good.
Perfect. So if there isn't any more questions, shall I close? Oh, no more from anyone? Perfect. Okay. So thank you very much for joining us all today. Thank you to the speakers and the attendees as well. I think it's been a really interesting event to hear from all of you, so that's been really great. As we've mentioned, we'll be sharing materials, including some informative guides, and also the recording on our social media channels. So if you stay tuned to the Our Bright Future page, we've got Twitter and Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn. So yeah, thank you very much for everyone for attending. It's been really great.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.